Hello everybody. How are you doing? I hope you're well, wherever you are in the world. I should probably actually say kia ora, which means good health and long life, as a greeting, but also just a general acknowledgement. We use it in New Zealand to mean hi, g'day, how are you? All that sort of stuff. It's from Maori. It is a Maori greeting, and it's used very casually as well as a little more formally. I'm not very good at proper formal greetings, but then anyone who knows me, and if you don't know me by looking at the hair, I'm not really good at formal. So we'll stick with that for now. So wherever you are in the world, I hope you're well. And if you aren't well, then I hope we can provide some light entertainment to keep you occupied while you're on the road to feeling a bit better. So if you're new here, hi, I'm Jev. I read old children's books, really old children's books. In fact, they are so old that they have gone out of copyright, such as these ones. Now, if I'm reading a physical book to you, it will be something that looks like this, possibly. Might be something a little bit newer, but it will no longer be within copyright. This one here, these ones are books that have been in my family for years. This one here is over 100 years old. This one is 125 years old or 115. I think it's 125. Hang on, just a moment. Yeah, 125 years old. Sorry, maths is not my strong suit. Just in case you hadn't figured that one out for yourselves. Now, also, if you're new here, we have jigsaw puzzles to keep you going, to keep your fingers and your eyes occupied while I'm reading a story. And if you want to take part in the jigsaw puzzles, then type into the chat box, which is over there. If you're on Twitch when I'm live, type into the chat box !jigsaw, Jigsaw, or !puzzle, Puzzle. And yes, I did say Z because this is New Zealand. And then you can have something that will keep your fingers and your eyes occupied while I'm reading to you. Sometimes it makes for a little bit more ability to concentrate if you've got something that you're doing with your hands. Thanks for following your boy Astro. Great to have you here. So yeah, feel free to join in with the puzzles. I am one of a number of people who read public domain books on Twitch. I am part of the official Codex Twitch readers team. That's their logo down there, Codex. And actually, I'll give you some links for Codex. Just a moment. My keyboard is not where I usually do all my typing when I'm not streaming, so I have to pick away with one finger. Normally I just rattle, but when I'm streaming I have to sort of put it over to one side so that my microphone's in the right place. So the links you have in the chat now are the Codex Twitch team, which will show, if you follow that link, it will show, preferably in a background tab on your browser rather than losing what we're doing here. But if you follow that link, it will show you everyone who's in the official Codex team and also who's currently live. I'm probably top of the list at the moment because I've just gone live. Sometimes there'll be another reader who's reading it at a similar time to me, but not very often because I'm in New Zealand and most of the others are in North America. There's a little bit more spread than that. The Codex team is great because we have people from all walks of life. We've got actors, voice actors, audiobook narrators, people who do this as a living professionally. So they have an incredibly high standard of reading ability, unlike me. I thought about the possibility of being an audiobook narrator, but I like the freedom to just read something once and that's it. I don't have to keep going over it to get it right. And I can stop and have a laugh about something and all sorts of things like that, and not having to do edits to make sure it's all neat and tidy and proper. I love the work they do. It's just not me. In fact, I actually do listen to audiobooks when I'm doing things like cooking or whatever else like that, where I don't, where I'm doing a job that's a little bit less exciting and I want to have something that'll keep my brain busy. So things like cooking dinner, vacuuming, all that sort of stuff. Stick on the headphones or get out the Bluetooth speaker and listen to a book. So, yeah, we've got people who do those things. We've also got a librarian. We've got a teacher. All sorts of different skills and life backgrounds. For me, I do business admin for our small business that's based out of our home, and I take product photos for the same business, and I update our website so that we can sell our products to the other businesses that we are supplying. So that's what I do when I'm not doing this here. What else was I going to tell you? Oh, I was going to give you some tips. If you're new here, you need the tips. So I have 3 tips for you. Drinks, tip number 1, drinks. Tip number 2, snacks. And tip number 3 is get drinks, get snacks, and get comfortable. That's what they are. I've been trying to think up a more concise way of saying them. I'll explain. Always, I have water handy, and I always shake this one at you guys because I prefer this one for what it looks like. But I actually drink from this because that other one tips over too easily, and I don't want all that water in my technology. So I'm going to hydrate. Thank you, Astro, for the redemption. That's better. I definitely need it. I'm still getting over this cold that's been lingering for a while. It's just in my throat at the moment. So my voice is not quite back to normal. I do not have my regular dulcet tones, but that's all right. It's all part of the fun. So usually with tip number 1, I have something else to drink as well, like coffee. I don't today. I'm quite happy with just having water. Normally I will have coffee because that's actually my favourite drink, whatever form of it that I choose to brew it in our house. So we've got a little home espresso machine, and I will make espresso-based coffees. So that will be things like a flat white, which originally is a New Zealand Australian version of something like a latte or a cappuccino, but with microfoam in the milk. So it's quite silky. It's very yummy. You don't have the coarse, the thick, dry foam on top that you have with a cappuccino, but it's also got more of the microfoam in it than a latte traditionally does. But it's quite a strong drink because New Zealanders and Australians, we like our coffee quite strong. So it'll be a double shot espresso, and then steamed milk, which gives the microfoam to it if you steam it properly. So that's usually what I drink. But otherwise, I have and I'm trying to think of the various names for it, the little glass coffee pot which has a thing in it. So in New Zealand, it's commonly called a plunger pot because you plunge it down once the coffee has brewed to filter out the grounds. I've also heard it called a French press. My American friends tend to call it a French press. And when we were in England, it was called a cafetiere. And so I've got a big one of those. I've got a small one of those, depending on how strong I want my coffee. And I've also got a stovetop coffee pot, which is called a mocha pot, M-O-K-A, not mocha, M-O-C-H-A, which is a type of coffee drink made with chocolate and coffee. So a mocha pot is an Italian invention. It's the one which often you see them. They're kind of like an angular hourglass made out of aluminium. And you see them in, I don't know, movies set in New York with Italianate families in them. Will often have those on their stoves. When I was growing up, I used to go down and stay with friends who lived in the city, and I used to love walking into their house because the smell of the freshly ground coffee and also freshly prepared coffee and Parmesan cheese and spaghetti bolognese and olives and all these things, when you walked in the house, it smelt, and fresh made bread. It smelt delicious. You walked in the house and you just got hungry and thirsty. So I've also got a mocha pot, which I make coffee on the stovetop with, which is not as strong as what I make when I'm doing my espresso-based coffees, but it's still very yummy. It's a great one for if I want to have coffee without milk in it. Often on the days where, g'day Jonathan, great to have you here. Often on the days when I've run out of milk. So I'll make a stovetop coffee. Delicious. And if you ever are really, really, really stuck and you want a coffee, a pleasant coffee, and you have coffee grounds, they are fresh ones, it sounds yucky, but please trust me on this one. I used to do this on the boat all the time. We used to have a little family boat that we'd be away on. It was the only way we could have a boat. It was this little thing that my dad had part of it built, and then he did the rest of the work on it. But we would be away on it every summer holidays, weekend, all this sort of stuff. Anyway, so later on, me and my husband got the boat, and we didn't have a coffee pot at this stage. So what I would do, take the coffee grounds with me, and you heat your water, not boiling, nearly, but not quite boiling. You pour your water into the cup, and then you put a gently rounded teaspoon of coffee on it, or you put your coffee in the bottom of the cup, and then you put your hot water on top. Give it a bit of a stir and let it sit. The key is let it sit. You have to let it sit until those coffee grounds are so saturated with water that they want to sink to the bottom of the cup. It helps if you've got a glass type cup where you can see through the side. And then you give another stir, and often you'll get a little bit sitting on the top, more a coffee or foam than anything else. And the rest of the grounds will drop to the bottom. If they haven't all dropped, if they go down and then come up, leave it for longer. It won't be quite so hot, but it will saturate. You'll get the full extraction from the coffee beans of the actual yummy flavour. But if you drink it gently when it's ready at that stage, then you treat it like an old-fashioned cup of tea where you use tea leaves, not tea bags, and you don't have a tea sieve. Not a fancy cup of tea, just an old-fashioned at home or on a building site cup of tea where you drink it carefully, so you're not swishing it around all the time, and then you let the grounds or the tea leaves settle to the bottom, and then you just don't drink that very last bit. That used to be the way that everybody drank their tea and also coffee. Let the grounds settle to the bottom, and it's quite yummy, and you don't need to have milk in it because you don't need to make it quite so strong. Anyway, so coffee is my favourite drink, just in case you were wondering. But I don't drink lots and lots of it. I will have usually 2, maybe 3, sometimes 1 coffee a day. I can go without and I don't get coffee headaches. It's just one of those things. So that's tip 1. Tip 2 is snacks. It's always a lot more fun when you're listening to a story or when you're watching a movie or a TV series to have drinks and snacks with you. It just makes it so much more fun. So snacks today are, and I've got 2 of them, plastic cheese. Oh, yummy. And it's sitting out of the fridge long enough to go extra soft so I can roll it up and tear pieces off and all that sort of stuff. So snacks today are, for me, plastic cheese. What are your snacks? Did you remember to bring some? You've got enough time to go off and get yourself something quickly from the cupboard or the fridge, if possible. So tip 3 is get comfortable. And by get comfortable, I mean find yourself the best seat in the house, or your favourite blanket and pillow, or whatever else it takes for you to be comfortable with wherever you are while you're listening. Now, if you have to work, I understand that. If I'm just nattering away in your ears while you're working, that's all good. If you have to be studying, that's all good too, because we don't get into testing or anything like that around here. We're not checking up on you and making sure you're doing the things you ought to be doing or anything else like that. We just, if you can be comfortable, it helps. And if you're having to sit on an office chair, I hope it's a comfortable office chair. It's nicer if you get to actually be somewhere comfortable. You're able to, oh, coleslaw is redeemed. Okay, just a moment, coleslaw. I just want to finish off one thing I'm doing over here, and then I shall do it. So for those of you who are new, we have a points redemption system. Yes, we have channel points. My channel points are called pages. So coleslaw has redeemed for 1,000 pages. Area, what's all this about? Which means I'm now going to, when I get over to the right window, I'm now going to put up the spinner to pick something. Here we go. Hang on. I need to just... Sorry, my brain has gone a little bit la-la on this. I don't know why. Okay, that's the right stuff there. I usually get that to go slightly... Oh, that's what it is. Interact. I need the interact window. Otherwise, I can't do a thing. There you go. That fits better. Right, so I'm going to spin this dial up there. And for you people on YouTube, I'm sorry, you can't actually directly take part in this. But if you're here when I'm live, you can do this through the chat that we have running while I'm talking away to you all. So I'm going to click the spinner. Here it goes. What are we going to get? What ears am I going to get? And we have bats. We had spiders a couple of times ago, but today we have bats. And I'll take those ones out of the drawer now. So if anyone else does do a redemption, we're not going to get bats again. Sorry, I'm just looking for the right place. And I will have my bats on for 6 minutes. I just have to find them. Sorry, they're here. I just have to find them in my box of ears and other bits and pieces. Bats, come here, bats. Here they are. Here's my bats, which is why I'm usually sitting a little bit lower in the stream window than, oh, sorry, catching bits of hair. Why I'm a little bit lower in this. There you go. There's my bats. Can you see them? The cute little bats with the boingy bats with the springs and the bits of fluff and all that sort of stuff. Just a moment. There was something I needed to do. Camera. I'll just pull that down a little bit further so you can see the ears on the top of my head. So I'm going to run the timer now and carry on talking. And the reason I do that is at the end of my 6 minutes, I get to take them off. And if anyone else does want to do a redemption like that, if they've got enough points, they're most welcome to. We also have a higher price redemption where you get to choose what I wear instead of it being a random pick. So thank you very much, Coleslaw, for choosing them. I shall now get this started when I pull up the right one. Yes, yay. Right, so that's now running for 6 minutes. And right, so where do we get to? We got to our 3 tips, which is get drinks, get snacks, and get comfortable. The next thing is, sorry. Yeah, I know I say way too much. It's terrible. I really don't want to, but it just sort of happens. One of those things, you know. Right, so I've got my ears on. The timer is running. I also have a dictionary app, which means that if I'm looking up, it's fine. Well done, Jonathan. Very good. If I look up a word, I will type it into the chat, and then we get a little pop-up here if the dictionary I use has the word in it. Do you like my weird hair today? It's got these funny curls going on in different places. Like one side is mainly straight, and the other side has got these funny sweepy bits on. Anyway, it just does that. My hair is very random. Anyway, doesn't matter. So one of the things I do want you folk to do for me is I'm just going to write, when I find the right place, not that one, this one, that one. I've just given you the link for our Discord server. So on the Discord server, there's a whole lot of different channels. We have channels for some of the books that I've read, and when I remember to, I put the illustrations from that book there. If anyone else wants to put the illustrations in a book that I don't have the title for, but it's one we've read, let me know, and I will open up a channel for it, and then you're welcome to put the illustrations for that book. Now, if you go and join our Discord server, you can have you can make suggestions about the next children's public domain book that I read. I have already explained that I only read public domain books here. I save the recordings here and transfer them over to YouTube, and this is where I transfer them to. Once they're over there, they get put into playlists. Then I sometimes get a little bit behind, and I do try to get timestamps on them, but I don't always manage to. So if you do ever watch any over on YouTube and you want to put timestamps in to the comments section under each video, because I don't put them as kids only, because I want people to feel free to actually make comments on the videos. Nice ones, okay, please, you know. We keep it all family friendly, whether it's on Twitch or on YouTube. So if you go to this link here, my YouTube channel, which I will also give you over here. Yeah, actually, has this one got it? Yeah. It's got my Twitter, my Instagram, and my coffee. No, that's not the one I wanted. This one, which I should have remembered. YouTube, there you go. You've got the link for my YouTube channel. So if you go to my YouTube channel and find any of my videos that you want to watch, they go up from here about 2 weeks afterwards. They go up on YouTube. I put them into playlists. Now, if you do watch any over there and you write down what time it was I went from just doing this blethering away intro kind of general chat to the start of the chapter, write down what that time is, put it in a comment below, and you can actually put a list of the times for the different, if we've got a reading that is several chapters for that video, you're welcome to write those in there, and then I will actually put them on the official part of the video, and so therefore people can, if they wish to skip all this chat, they can by clicking on the timestamp for it. Now, I do happen to know it's a little bit like having a car. If you have a car, you don't necessarily have to go out. If you don't have a car or access to a car, you really want to go out. That's just how life is. So timestamps are a bit like that. People who have no way of specifically knowing where to skip to get past all this chatter, obviously, often will really want to. You give them timestamps to skip all the intro chat, and often they don't. They just actually listen to it. They just want to know that they can. I mean, you can anyway, you can just sort of scroll along, but that's just human nature. That's how we are as people. That's how things go. Right, so what was I going to say? What else? So I've got YouTube, oh yeah, if you're on YouTube and you want to come and join us on Twitch, here you go, here's the link. Right there. And if you forget to write that down, it's basically twitch.tv/ and then my username, which is jevvnz, and I always have 3 V's in Jev. Okay. If you want to, you can join us on Twitch. I do read at about 3 p.m. New Zealand time. That's just the time that works for me, which is why some people will watch the VODs, the recorded videos on Twitch that are available for 2 weeks. Other people will watch it on YouTube instead. But if you want to be part of what's going on, like Coleslaw did with the redemption of the ear thingies, which I think the timer probably has already gone off and I didn't even see it. Oh, no, it hasn't. Goodness, it's nearly... There it is, it's gone off. I'll take these off now and I'll get that one out of the way. So if you want to take part and do redemptions like the ears and anything else like that, then all you have to do is come over to Twitch, join Twitch and follow me. Doesn't cost anything. And then Twitch will tell you when I'm live and you can come and be part of the conversation. There you go. And also do join the Discord server. I've given you the link over there. You can find me on Twitter. I occasionally post over there, aside from the reposts of my Instagram notifications that I will be going live soon. I try to keep them a bit varied. They're usually some picture of the cat or me doing weird things with my hair or some inspiring photo of flowers that I've found around our place or something like that. Sometimes there's something nice to think about. Sometimes it's just a bit of a laugh. And they tend to get cross-posted to Twitter, or at least the first picture of any post does. And then afterwards I have to go along and add the other ones to Twitter because Twitter and Instagram don't like each other. But I do have it so that the posts that go to Twitter will at least show you the photo instead of just a link. That's just the way it is. Right. So, I'm sure there were some other things I was going to tell you about. What were they? Yeah, so we need to pick a new book that I'm going to read because today is the second to last chapter and then we've got one more chapter. I will be reading the next chapter unless something happens. I'll be reading it on Wednesday. Today is Monday in New Zealand, so 2 days from today, whatever that works out to for you. I will not be reading on Friday. I have to be the taxi for a family member who's going to have a checkup down at the down at the nearest hospital, just because it's a follow-up for something. They're all okay. It's just one of those things that needs to be done. And driving around that particular part of the city is not the easiest when you're elderly. So therefore, I'm the family taxi when it comes to things like that, and also go into any meetings in case there's any things that need to be, any instructions that need to be given, that need to be reminded of a little bit later on. So that's what I will be doing on Friday, instead of being here playing with headbands and jigsaw puzzles and reading you stories. So please accept my apologies. I will not be here at the end of the week. Right, if you wish to know when else I shall be streaming apart from this Friday, if you're following me on Twitch, then there is a schedule on one of the tabs on my page, on my Twitch channel. Sorry, I have ADHD, and part of the way it shows is that if I get itchy, and I'm always itchy, if I get itchy and it's particularly noticeable, I have to itch it. Otherwise, I will get so distracted, I will not be able to speak straight. It's just what it does. One of those things. It also means that we have some lovely diversions. I'll be reading something and we'll go off on a rabbit trail somewhere. And then my autistic sense of completion and love of finding information about stuff will kick in, and so not only will we go off on a rabbit trail, we'll go off on a doozy. We will find out about all sorts of things. Sometimes we'll call in the big guns and Jonathan will give us a little bit of additional information about a plant that we're looking up, or some observation of something to do with other related plants that I've been looking up, because he has horticulture in his background, his training, which is excellent. Hang on. Let's see if that works. Yes, my special shout out for Jonathan. So Jonathan also reads on Twitch sometimes. He plays games, he does other things. He does podcast type conversations with people, all sorts of stuff. But when he's reading, he will often be reading Tudor court documents and records, because his passion project is a historically accurate game that is involved with the various intrigues that were going on in the time of the Tudors. So that's Henry VIII, Mary Queen of Scots, all of that era. Elizabeth I, sorry, that's the key one I was thinking of and my brain wasn't supplying. And he is reading these real documents from that era. So letters between different people where letters happen to be saved. Books that are based on court records from that time. All sorts of different things, because they all add to the understanding of that time period, what was going on, what people were doing, all the secrets that were being told in the background. All sorts of stuff. So thank you, Jonathan, for that nice bow that you've just given us. But it's marvellous. All sorts of things. Also, with my Codex readers, they don't just read books. They will often play games and things like that too. Arinel, one of our readers, she is a librarian. She reads children's books at her library that she works at, among other things. But on stream, she tends to read manga and choose your own adventures that are romance based. And other things like Jane Austen and other things like that. And she's got full permission to read all the stuff that she reads. I was telling you that for a reason, to do with people on stream. She's a mobile streamer. That's what it was. So she will play games on stream, but you don't usually see her when she's playing a game because she's playing on her Kindle Fire, or maybe her phone, but mainly her Kindle Fire. And so therefore she's not doing it like me on a computer where I've got a camera set up and a microphone. I've got a book stand too, and all sorts of things like that. She's actually just using the device that she is reading from or that she is playing on, and she streams that way. So we've got a really wide variety of people. We've got people who are basically VR tubers, except that they're reading and playing games. We've got a lovely diverse bunch of people. So some of them are regulars here, other ones are just, sometimes they're here, sometimes they're not. Sorry about that, Jonathan. I'll just see if I can tell it to allow your comment. No, come on, you're meant to let me allow that. Sorry, I'm still finding my way around certain aspects of writing, of permitting stuff. I'm just going to copy it because I can't remember how to do that. So this is just what Jonathan wrote. He's been timed out just because he's got a few too many words in there, and I'll just put up a command so you can see why. Right, so if you read that thing that Stream Elements just gave you, it will explain largely what's going on with why he's just had his message banned. Right, so Jonathan's comment was, from a school for pickpockets, Elizabeth I throwing a slipper at a courtier and hitting them in the face with her wrath, to a lord checking on a fellow lord's house while he was away. So these are all the different sort of things he's reading about in the sort of things that Jonathan reads online. It's really cool. And I'm really hoping he can bring all these different sorts of threads, these things that make it feel so much more real because they're based in the minutiae, the little details of what was going on in people's lives at the time. All that sort of stuff. I think that's wonderful. So just to explain, and it's never a tell-off for anybody who's put up a comment and it's been banned and they've had a timeout for 30 seconds. What happens is, and I'll read the command first, to keep chat flowing and to give folk equal opportunity to chat, messages are limited to 150 characters. That includes emotes, because emotes are made up of characters because of the name of the emote. You can break lengthy messages into several small ones, or better yet, subscribe, because if you have a subscription to my channel, it doesn't actually ban you if you have over 150 characters in your words. The other aspect of it, so that's the outside reason for why we have the 150 character limit. It's like back in the old days of 140 characters on Twitch. It's now 280, but it does actually keep conversation flowing, and it helps you to get really concise with what you're saying, although it is frustrating at times. So what I do if I'm on someone's channel where they've got something similar is I'll start typing, I'll get partway through what I'm saying, and then I'll hit the enter button and then keep typing and hit enter again. And it becomes very natural and easy to do. In the days of old text messages, I'm old enough, some of you aren't, yeah, we had the same sort of restrictions. One of the other reasons I have this in place is because with spam bots, often their messages are over 150 characters. And if you have a chat ban on any message over 150 characters, you will eliminate them clogging up your chat the majority of the spam bots by actually having that limitation in place. It's a really simple thing to do if you're a streamer, and very, very useful. And speaking of which, there's a whole bunch of different things to do with security if you're a streamer or if you're a mod for somebody who streams, which if you join our Discord server for Codex, that's the Codex Discord server. I shall give you the Codex links again. There's a whole section on the Codex server called security, and Goriki, one of our regulars here and also one of my mods, he has written up a whole lot of different things to do with looking after the security of your Twitch stream. Things like banning bots, whether you ban first or you block first. You ban first actually, and then you block if you need to. All sorts of things like that. And the Codex Discord server is quite happy for you to join it and not actually get into other conversation, to purely join it for the sake of finding out about the security stuff. We have no problem with that. You're most welcome to. If you do want to join in with other stuff, that's cool. We do things like book club. It's meant to be once a month, but we haven't yet picked the next book, so I'm not quite sure what's happening because no one's told me. I meant to know because I'm in on the inside team. But we have other people who are also Codex associates. They're not part of the official Twitch team, but they are Twitch readers. And you'll see them, you can see who they are over on Codex. And it just gives you a broader pool of people who you can listen to if you want to listen to stories. As far as I know, I'm the only one who solely reads children's books. Others will read a piece of a children's book or a whole book, but that's not all they read. They will often read books that are not specifically written for children. So that's enough of that. How about I get on with reading? Yeah. Oh, there is one other redemption that I forgot to tell you about. I did mention it last time, but I forgot to tell you about today, and I should do this at the beginning. There is a redemption for if you wish me to get back on track with the book. Now, this is not just for at the beginning. This is also once I'm reading a book. If I get off on a rabbit trail, if I go off on a tangent, or any of those other lovely words to do with that sort of getting stuck into some information, if I go off on any of those things and you want me to get back to reading, there is a redemption where you can use the, it's not the tangent timer, it's the something rocket. I've got a name for it. Oh my goodness. Ramble rocket, that's what it is. Yes, I've done my 3 tips, coleslaw. Sorry, did you miss that? 3 tips. Remember, get drinks, get snacks, and get comfortable. And here we go. I've actually explained them, so no, it's okay. I won't go back over them again. And yes, I am going to do those emotes. And no, I haven't yet figured out how I'm going to stream that at the same time as doing it. Because one of the problems I have with people who are streaming an activity, not a game, but an activity on their computer, like doing graphics and stuff like that. If it's purely based on what's on the screen, like my computer screen, rather than actually someone who's doing pure artwork, such as what Squibble does. She's another one of our regulars. She's an artist, does gorgeous watercolor and oil paintings, and some of them are actually ones that are for illustrations for books and stuff. She's got a long-term project that she's doing her own illustrations for the Wizard of Oz, and she does that one on Thursdays, I think it is. Actually, I'll give you her link. Hang on. So Squibble's link is that. If you want to give her a follow, it's really worth it. Very chill, very relaxed. She'll just chat away. She's usually got music going in the background. And there's such a wide range of different artwork that she does with it. It's all this sort of fine brushwork, but the pictures that she's doing, sometimes she's got the Rosie Maple moths. She's got the Wizard of Oz ones that she's doing, and there's other ones as well. And sometimes she'll do things for like stickers and things like that she's making, where she'll actually be printing and cutting things out and all sorts of things like that. So if you wish to, It would be wonderful if you follow any of the people I've mentioned on stream. And if you are a streamer and I have not mentioned you, and if you're a regular here, please tell me over in the Discord server so I can create a command for you as well, so I can give you a shout out. Because I don't actually end up watching lots of people when they're streaming, so I don't always know that they specifically stream. And not everybody saves the VODs for me to actually realise that they do stream. Some people technically are streamers, but they never, I never see them streaming. And I never quite know if it's because they haven't saved their videos or if it's actually just because it's been 6 months since they last streamed. But if you do stream on like every couple of weeks, whatever, or more often than that, give us a shout out over on the Discord server and I'll create my own shout out for you over here. I'm trying to create specialized ones for each person, just because then I can make the commands a lot shorter and it's not quite so crucial to get the name spelt right, because like Squibble Design is a really long username and I have to put that after exclamation mark and SO and space and make sure I don't miss any letters and all that sort of stuff. And if I get it wrong, I've got to type it all again. So yeah, that's why I like making the nice short ones that are my own personal ones. Anyway, so let's get on with reading. We are reading the second to last chapter. So I'm Jev, I'm reading A Terrible Tomboy by Angela Brazel. And we are reading, got to unlock it again. We are reading the second to last chapter, which is chapter 23, and it's called The Antiquarian Society. Let's see what's going to happen. Remember, they've been having some quite serious financial difficulties, and there's a chap who's trying to call in the mortgage on their farm and property because he wants to have that land because he's got some developments he wants to do on it and get richer off it. So let's hope he gets his comeuppance. Yes, that would be good. Who wants to see him get his comeuppance? Me! And while you're listening, you can do the jigsaw puzzle, exclamation mark puzzle or exclamation mark jigsaw, and then just follow the instructions that it gives you when you click on the link for it. Let's go. The Antiquarian Society. Who comes to the ruin, the ivy-clad ruin, with old shaking arches, all moss overgrown? There's our opening verse. May drew to a close with a burst of warm weather, and the Whitsuntide holidays promised to prove that all the heart of the cheap tripper might... I am missing words and it's not making as much sense. I shall read those again, just a moment. Word. I'm going to use 2 hands for this. See if that one works. Nope. That is not a word that's in my dictionary. What a shame. Whitsuntide. It means the timing of Whitsunday. White Sunday. So I'm going to look that one up because it is an odd word, isn't it? I need to get the cursor in the right place. Hi, past shelf date. Great to have you here. Good to see you again. It's lovely to have you here. I love all my lovely familiar faces, regulars. I'm just going to look this up for you. The weekend all week, including Whitsunday. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Google. That's not helping. I will now tell you, thank you to Wikipedia, what it actually means. Pentecost. There you go. In the church calendar. Rural England used to observe church calendar days as important days. Yeah, it's not a commonly known thing anymore. Whitsun, also Whitsunday or Whit Sunday. from White Sunday, I think, is the name used in Britain and throughout the world among Catholics, Anglicans and Methodists for the Christian high holy day of Pentecost. It is the 7th Sunday after Easter, which commemorates the descent of the Holy Spirit upon Christ's disciples as described in Acts 2. In England, it took on some characteristics of Beltane, which is the Gaelic May Day festival, which is held on the 1st of May, this is Beltane, or about halfway between spring equinox and summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere, the start of summer in Ireland. So that's Beltane. So it took on some of the characteristics of Beltane, probably because it was around a broadly similar time of year. Quite often they'd use religious days instead of specific days too. Yeah. And I'm guessing that Jonathan's still writing because he's got IE there. He's not going to get 30-second banned again. Right, I'll keep reading here. I will see you 3 days before Michaelmas. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because church holy days, which is where we get the term holiday from, were so important within local social settings, especially because at the time people were a lot more rural based, and a lot of the discussions we have are either upper society or rural society. Because of that, the church calendar was a lot more important to them. It defined their day-to-day lives outside of just normal work. I know it's not COVID because when I had it back in January, fully vaccinated, it's only lasted 2 days. I think it's just a really bad cold. I coughed so hard last night. Oh, that's terrible. I'm so sorry that you're not feeling good at the moment, past shelf date. And I really do hope that that's going to start to clear up. So I'm just reading out past shelf date's comments because they're irregular here, so we keep up on how each other's doing. I think it's just a really bad cold. I coughed so hard last night trying to sleep. I had acid reflux for the first time in my life. Acid reflux is terrible. I hate it. It's one of the things to do with my age that I tend to get more now than I used to. But yeah, if you're coughing to the point of acid reflux, it's not pleasant, especially if you've never had it before. It's like, what's this burning? I can't stand it. And it tastes terrible too. Thankfully, I had another pillow to put under my back and head. Yes. A few years ago, I had a really bad cold where I actually felt like I was having trouble breathing because of the congestion in my lungs. And it was just a cold. It wasn't anything more serious than that before the days of COVID. And I would cough a lot. And I found if I could sleep a bit more upright than normal, I was actually able to breathe better and I didn't cough as much. So instead of coughing and keeping my hubby awake, I went and slept in the spare room. We have a sofa in there because that's where we watch movies as well. And I piled up some cushions at one end of the sofa, so I was lying like this. So my head was up here, well supported, and my back, and then my legs were out here. And by having my head up just that little bit higher, I didn't cough as much and I could breathe better. And when I did have to cough, I got over it a lot quicker too. Don't forget, plenty of steam helps to reduce the need to cough. The dryness of the air, especially if you're going into a cold snap like with winter coming up, or air conditioning. I'm just saying this because I know that most of my listeners, apart from my specific Kiwis, are in the Northern Hemisphere, so you're going into winter, not summer like us. Anything like that will usually help. Drink lemon and ginger tea, whether you make it with grated ginger and fresh lemon juice or a tea bag that is based on lemon and ginger, and sweeten it with a bit of honey. That helps to soothe the throat, but it also helps to loosen up the phlegm so that you don't have the need to cough as much either. So I really hope that's over for you soon. So back to Whitsuntide. As Jonathan was saying, any of those church calendar days were often used as a marker during the year for when you're arranging, when you're going to do something 3 days before this, or 2 days after that or whatever, I'll see you on Whit Sunday or something, that sort of thing. All that sort of, because they were an important part of the year. Whitsuntide, the week following Whit Sunday. There you go. Whitsuntide, tide, means a passing of time of a set piece, is the usage generally. The Whitsuntide was the week following Whit Sunday. It was one of 3 holiday weeks for the medieval villein. A villein is a crofter or a cotter, a serf, a working person who's tied to the land in the place where they live and work. It's part of the feudal system where you have lords, ladies, and various things. Villeins had more rights and social status than those in slavery, but they had a number of other restrictions on them, which differentiated them from free men. Free men were people who could have their own businesses instead of working for the lord or the lady or whoever the landholder was. So past shelf date is also saying, first I had hay fever for the first time a few years ago. A friend suggested spicy food. Yes, I have heard that spices can help with that. Not that you should have to follow a full Ayurvedic system, but there are some herbs that are used in Ayurvedic medicine, that's Indian medicine, and also 1 or 2 in traditional Chinese medicine. Not the full thing, but there are some aspects where there's a recognition of certain plants having certain properties that help us. Not based on the doctrine of signatures, which is this plant has leaves that look like lungs. Look, they are lung-shaped and they have spots on them, like lungs have the little air spaces in them. So therefore, this plant will help us with lung disorders. That is what the doctrine of signatures uses. Something looks like this, then it has an influence on that part of the body. Not really working. Anyway, so traditionally Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic, which is Indian, not the full-blown where you go in for full consultations, but just the general usage of certain herbs and spices can be quite accurate, because that part of it is based on generations of observation. When you're eating this, you don't tend to get as sick with that sort of stuff. So that can help, and spicy food can help with certain issues too. Hay fever, if it's plant cause, if you have a small amount, just to make sure it's not going to cause allergy problems, a small amount every day of like a teaspoon or half a teaspoon of honey made from the flour, locally produced honey that is made from the flour that you're allergic to, can help to reduce your reaction to it. Not always. You've got to be super careful that it doesn't that you don't actually have a major allergic reaction. But for some people with hay fever, if they know they're allergic to a particular flowering plant, if they can find someone who has bees that have collected honey from that, and they know which particular part of the hive that honey is in, and can get some of that raw, it has to be raw, not pasteurized, and low processed. If they can get some of that honey and just have a half teaspoon of that every day, they have a very, very, very low reaction instead of a strong hay fever reaction to that particular allergen plant. And I'm speaking from friends' experience with it. They've actually found it quite accurate. So carrying on with past shelf dates comment, it worked, and now I keep a bottle of sriracha sauce on my bedside table to take a sip so I can breathe clearly. Off to sleep. That's great. If the hay fever is the day after it's rained, it'll almost certainly be fungal spores rather than pollen. And that sad face, I am going to guess, is experience. Yes, molds and fungi, their spores can be a major for people with hay fever and various other breathing problems. Often related to that sort of, it's a mild kind of allergic reaction, but shows itself through your breathing. So yeah, anything like that, you've got to be very tuned into what's going on around you. But yeah, be careful. Ramble rocket. Thank you, Jonathan. I shall start my ramble rocket and then, hang on, I need to find the right window for it. And then we need to, so within 2 minutes, I'm going to be back on track with my story because you've got this rocket going up here. I have to be back on track with the story. When that goes off, I can do it before then. But yeah, okay. That's what the redemption's for. Well done, Jonathan. Thank you. We'll just carry on with this little bit about Whitsuntide and then we'll get back to the story. And you guys should hear it. Thank you, Coleslaw. Bend and stretch. That's a good idea. Sorry. Really good for your spine. When you've been sitting for a while, I'm going to do these ones too. There you go. I hope that satisfies the need. Right. So I've got 1 minute and 8 seconds. In the northwest of England, church and chapel parades called Whit Walks still take place at this time, sometimes on Whit Friday, the Friday after Whitsun. Typically, the parades include brass bands and choirs. Girls attending are dressed in white. That will be a reference to Whit or white. Traditionally, Whit fairs, sometimes called Whitsun ales, took place. Other customs such as Morris dancing, a most specifically unique form of folk dance, specifically unique to England, takes place as part of that. Associated with Whitsun, although in most cases they've been transferred to the Springbank holiday. So there you go. There's all sorts of different localised traditions. Oh, that rocket's getting close. That rocket's getting close. Oh, let's see what happens. I hope it's not too loud. You need to let me know if it's too loud because I don't get to hear it on my end. Okay? Time's up. Back to the story. Okay, here we go. Please do let me know if the volume on that was okay. Now, we've had enough on the bit on Whitsuntide, and we're going to find out after I've unlocked my iPad mini. Yeah, for those who don't know, I read from an old first generation iPad mini. Right, we're still on the first page, and we've got 26 of them to go. Okay levels, that's great to hear. Thank you. Anytime it gets too loud, please let me know, and then I'll see if I can make some adjustments. Right. May drew to a close with a boost of warm weather, and the Whitsuntide holidays promised to prove that all the heart of the cheap tripper... No, still got the wrong sequence on the words. I recall how Rowan Atkinson joked about Morris dancing on the thin blue line. I'm going to have to look that up. I'm pretty sure there'll be a YouTube video about that. The Whitsuntide holidays promised to prove all that the heart of the cheap tripper might desire. That's people who go on day trips and stuff like that. Though beyond a chance cyclist or two, that article was as unknown as the dodo in quiet Gorswin. These are trippers because they're not somewhere where you have omnibuses, and an omnibus could be horse-drawn back in the old day. Unknown as the dodo in quiet Gorswin, where fortunately the charms of the scenery had not yet been spoilt by picnic parties, leaving greasy sandwich papers and ginger beer bottles in the woods. They were lucky it was only greasy papers. These days it's plastic everywhere. Terry Pratchett had villagers using gorilla Morris dancing to surprise evil elves with Oh, that's right. I can't even remember which story it was in, but I do remember it. I do need to read some more Pratchett. I wish I could read it online, but I can't because it's not public to me. So they haven't yet been spoilt by picnic parties leaving greasy sandwich papers and ginger beer bottles in the woods and demanding noisy entertainment in the village. Yeah, you know, you're the locals, perform for us. Thank you very much. No, that wasn't good enough. You know, all that sort of nonsense, which some people get into. Just checking. Oh yeah, good. I've got a picture that I am going to be using shortly in this chapter. I'm just making sure I've got it ready. So there we go. Nor the youth of the neighbourhood corrupted into hanging around the public house doors to listen to the mirth and songs of the excursionists within. Somehow when people are off on holiday, they do a lot more heavy drinking and they tend to lose all their inhibitions, which can be good, but when you're in someone else's village, you can be very disruptive when you're doing that. And it can lead to some ideas that some of the young people who haven't had as much experience of the rest of the world, give them some wrong ideas about how to behave. Or offer faded bunches of flowers in exchange for halfpence. Yeah, you haven't got the locals flogging off whatever they can sell. Gorswin, having taken its annual holiday at Easter, made no account of Whit Week and went on with its work as usual, for the agricultural labourer does not claim so much in the way of pleasure as his brethren of the loom or the forge, such as, factory workers, those on the loom, or the forge, those who are creating things. I know if I get drunk, I throw up, so I just don't, It's just, some things are just not worth it. And it's good to have actually discovered that for yourself and make your own call on that, isn't it? You can have lots of fun and people can think that you're drunk without actually having gone anywhere near it. Some of us actually have this ability. Yeah. Anyway, the agricultural labour does not claim so much in the way of pleasure as his brethren of the loom or the forge, and is content with an occasional fair or village feast to break the monotony of his daily life. So we've just had the Gorswin Fair in a chapter or two previously. Whit Monday was a holiday at school, however, and Peggy and Bobby, having a day at home, took a sudden fit of industry and started to weed the shrubbery with the noble intention of having it raked over and tidied by tea time, being put somewhat on their mettle by father's remarks on the subject of sustained labour. And his laughing incredulity when they assured him he would find it all neatly finished when he returned from Warford that evening. Warford's the nearest town, which is where they go to school as well, which is why they go in the little cart with the horse pulling it. It's a bit far to walk. It was a warm day, and gardening is particularly back-breaking work, but they toiled grimly away, neither liking to be the first to give in, and soon began to make considerable headway among the weeds. Great, that's good to hear, that they were actually getting somewhere with that. Carrying on. Neither liking to be the first to give in, and soon began to make considerable headway among the weeds. "Hello!" cried Bobby, suddenly pausing in his task of uprooting a giant dock. "Who on earth is that, all this crew coming up the drive? I say, Peggy, do come and look." So he's obviously a little bit further along than she is to have noticed. Peggy was not sorry to find an excuse to fling down her hoe and basket, and she came scrambling up the bank just in time to witness the strange procession that was slowly straggling from the great gate towards the front door. There were gentlemen, young and old and middle-aged, some in tourist tweeds, some in boating flannels, and some in sober black, most of them with books or road maps in their hands. So somebody who lives further away, somewhere where they do take more of a holiday attitude towards Whitsuntide and going on an excursion, day trippers, has come to the area. There's a group of them. Books or road maps in their hands, while a sprinkling of ladies, both grave and frivolous, in light summer costumes, with gay parasols, completed the party. That they were on an errand of pleasure was evident, for there was a tolerable amount of laughing and talking, while all appeared to be taking stock of the house and surroundings with considerable interest. Yes, because the Abbey, which is where the farm is, and where they live in their house, the Abbey is a ruined historic building, and the lands around it are part of that too. The family don't really pay much attention to that side of it just because it's their normal surroundings. So I'm guessing that that's what it is. Whatever can they want, said Peggy, who certainly had never seen the Abbey invaded by such an alarming number of callers before. They look as if they were going to take the place by storm. After a short parley at the door, the visitors were conducted by Nancy to the side gate, where they all filed into the ruins, from whence a lively hum of conversation could be clearly heard. I vote we go and see what they're after, said Bobby, his curiosity getting the better of him. And abandoning the weeds, the children ran round by the kitchen garden into the house. Did you ever see the like? Said Nancy as they catechised that giggling maiden for information, so they're drilling her to try and find out what's going on. They call themselves the Welsh Borders Society of Antiquaries, so they says. It's got the name on this little paper they've left, and they comes to the door wanting master's permission to look at the ruins. I says he ain't in, but I asks Miss Lillian, and she tells him yes, and there they all is, poking about among the nettles, and grubbing up stones and sticks, and sticking bits of mortar in their pockets, and dodging about with yard measures, for all the world like a set of lunatics. She's not used to these sort of people. What they can find to look at passes me, for there's naught there but the walls and the stones, and it seems they've come all the way from Warford in wagonettes. Just think of that now, only to look at a few old ruins when they might have spent Whit Monday in the Spa Gardens, or with the Grenadier Band and the Variety Company down from London too. But the ruins are tremendously interesting, Nancy. I don't wonder people want to come and look at them. Just think how old they are. Well, the gentry has queer tastes, I will allow. There's you and Master Bobby now always a-collecting of stones and insects, and like rubbish to litter up the rose parlour, and I suppose some grown folks is as foolish as children over such things. She's a bit of a wag, isn't she? However, it's live and let live, and if they care to take their pleasure that way, let 'em. Although it wouldn't be to my taste if I was a lady born. Come along, Bobby, said Peggy. We'll go into the ruins and see what these people are doing. Miss Crossland has often talked about the Antiquarian Society in the history lessons at school. Sorry, itchy nose. No, it's not from the cat. I haven't had cuddles with the cat. He's over on the floor further over behind my green screen. Usually he's on the sofa along there, but no, today he's on the floor, and I've got rain on the roof, and I'm not sure if it's going to get heavy rain or if it's just going to stay nice and light. We'll see what happens. There is a forecast for the region just north of us to get really heavy rain. They've got a rain warning, but I'm not sure if we're going to get it to that level or not. We'll see. Miss Crossland has often talked about the Antiquarian Society in the history lessons at school, and I always wanted to see one of the meetings. I do, said Nancy, and if you can make head or tail of their talk, it's more than I can. One of them asked me if there were any sepulchral slabs, and it turned out she only meant tombstones. After all, She could have got plenty of they in Warford Cemetery without coming this distance, I reckon. Feeling rather shy and not liking to intrude their presence upon strangers, the children followed the party into the ruins, and creeping under the protecting shelter of some bushes, found they could take quite a good view of the proceeding unobserved. The antiquarians did not seem to be discussing anything very learned just at present, for they had drawn out flasks and packets of sandwiches, and were engaged in picnicking among the stones in a truly modern fashion, while occasional bursts of laughter were wafting along the air. "It looks jolly fun. I wish they'd ask us to join them," whispered Bobby. "I don't see Miss Crossland there," returned Peggy. "Perhaps she's away for Whitsuntide. They certainly seem to be having a good time." To enjoy an al fresco meal, however, was evidently not the main business of the society, for the members soon disposed of their refreshments and began to collect in little groups round a learned-looking gentleman, who, with a bundle of papers in his hand, seemed clearing his throat in preparation for giving an address. I'm sorry, I'm just going to have something to eat so I don't get heartburn. It's one of those things that sometimes happens. If I don't eat at the right sort of timing, I think it's just that my stomach is so used to eating on a fairly regular basis that it gets the stomach acid ready for when it thinks I'm going to be eating. And if I don't, it's just like, well, let's unleash the stomach acid anyway. Right. One more piece. They began to collect in little groups around a learned-looking gentleman who, with a bundle of papers in his hand, seemed clearing his throat in preparation for giving an address, speaking to them about something, like a speech. The children could hear most of what he said, and a very interesting account of the abbey it proved to be, with a description of the size and the extent of the old buildings, and the life led by the ancient monks, which quite delighted Peggy, who revelled in Scott's novels and historic stories, and which made the past days rise up so clearly before her that she could almost fancy the bell ringing for vespers and hear the rustle of the grey robes of the friars as they passed silently up the chancel to their stalls, or chancel, to their stalls in the choir. The members seemed to take copious notes in pocket-books and asked occasional questions, one literary-looking lady in spectacles and a large black hat with nodding feathers being particularly insistent and volunteering so much information that she threatened to usurp the place of the lecturer. And had to be gently suppressed, with an old gentleman distributing pamphlets broadcast declaring that he had them specially printed for the occasion. So there's all these different things going on. The speeches were over at length, and a last farewell round. There is something I do want to look up and show you. Just a moment. There's an image I want to show you. Just trying to find one that's going to be useful for what I want. This. Come on, you guys. Let's see if I can get a bigger one of that. Yes! Yay! Save. And this one hopefully is not going to take me off on a tangent too long. I was going to do when I was doing the rocket, when I was setting it up, I was going to do a tangent timer, and then realised that the rocket was a lot more interesting. I thought the timer was just like some C4 and a little digital clock, and you saw the numbers counting down. It had an antenna on it, and then it would go boom. Oh, cool. But I thought the ramble rocket worked better because I tend to ramble. You know, we go off meandering all over the place, and the fuse on the rocket works really well for that. And I'm doing it again, aren't I? Right, I found the picture and I've saved it, and I'm going to find it on my broadcast software to show you. Not donkeys today, sorry. This one is to do with, because they've referenced the layout of the church a couple of times. Let's just make that a bit bigger so it's actually viewable. I'll be in front of it for part of it. It's just how it'll be, but it'll mean you can see the words on the picture. Right, that one there. Right, this is a traditional English style church. They're basically a cross shape. I'll make it a bit smaller so you can see it better. So this one's a little bit compressed one way. So basically you have the main body of the church along here, and the centre part is called the nave. The narthex is that entry bit. There's an aisle outside these columns that are holding up the roof. There's an aisle there and an aisle there. So if it's a really simple village church, it will have the nave, but it won't have aisles with columns because it will just be a box shape down the length. Then you've got the crossing, which is where you have the transept that goes across the crossing. And then this area up the front here is the choir. And that's where the monks used to sit and where they would sing. And in a more modern church that's still using modern church usage that is still using an old building, if the church has a choir, such as Guildford Cathedral, which is the cathedral that was in the city near where I used to live in England, there's a section there called the choir, which is up past the crossing. The pulpit for giving the sermon from is usually up here on one of these corners. So where you get the transept comes round there, and the pulpit will be up a little bit higher. Remember earlier on we had talk about Peggy decorating, I think it was Peggy decorating the pulpit in flowers, and the vicar wanting to make sure he could still be seen. And then the choir is up past there, and there's often kind of a bit of a fence section there. And if you have a church where people come up to the front for having communion, they'll come up to kind of around this point here. And then the choir, in a modern, what I was saying about modern usage, the actual choir will sit in this space called the choir. They will sing from up here, and their voices come up through because it's all hard surfaces. Their voices just blossom out in these spaces, and they echo around the place. And it sounds wonderful. Colster was saying, I think I saw one of those in the covering of the Queen in Wales. Yeah, probably, because the different cathedrals and churches that they use for a lot of things to do with royalty are based on a very common style of church, old church, and they are still using them. They are used for modern usage, but still using old buildings, which is wonderful. Well done on the puzzle. And that one is an antique shop with antique signs. Old signs at a London antique shop. So, yeah, there you go. I will find you another puzzle. I'll just see if I can find... a suitable one. No, don't get fancy, you silly thing. Nearly there, and then we'll carry on reading. I like this one. It's not one I would normally have picked for this, but it's one that I like the picture of, so therefore I'm going to show it to you. That one there, put in the link. And interact, and I will set this up for you. I'm giving you 144 pieces. There you go, just to keep you going a little bit longer. And I'll get you the link. Copy the link, get the ads out of the way. I love the fact that they just show us the ads for that part of it. I do hope that when you're actually playing the puzzle, they're not showing you additional ads. But I know that for the overlay part of it, what I show on stream here. There you go, and that should be ready to work if anyone wants to do that puzzle. So yeah, in one of the previous ones they talked about something in the transept. That's the bit that goes across the main line of the church. So you've got the main bit, you walk up this way, and the transept is up nearish to the front and goes across. And that's kind of also where they put overflow seating in the bits that poke out in a modern usage. Otherwise, in an older one, if it's a church that has around the rounded end at the top, sorry, it was on here on this one, sometimes they have little chapels between the pillars that poke out a little bit outside that wall space. And then some of the older churches, they will actually have little chapels at the end of those two transept sections. A chapel where you can, so you're within the church, but there's a section where it's just set aside for pondering, thinking, praying, communing with a particular saint, I suppose, if that's what you do. And that's not a negative about people who do that. That's just I don't do it. So I'm guessing in that context that that's how it works. That's what they're used for. Right. So we've talked about the she could almost imagine the bell ringing for Vespers, that's evening prayer time, and hear the rustle of the grey robes of the friars as they passed silently up the chancel, up through the main part of the church, to the stalls in the choir. So they go up past the transept and they go down, they go to sit in the places that they sit for the evening prayer time. And there you have rows on each side facing each other. The members seem to, I don't know, no, got that bit. No, I haven't. I haven't got that bit. So the chancel to their stalls in the choir. The members seemed to take copious notes in pocketbooks and asked occasional questions. One literary lady looking, we have had all that. I read all this bit before, and then I went back and got the picture to do with the church layout. So I'll just skip all that bit. The speeches were over at length, and a last farewell round of the ruins having been made, the society finally took its departure, with the intention of viewing the church and an injunction for all the members to assemble for tea at the Bluebell Arms at 4:30 precisely. So this is the village church, is one of the places they're going to look at, because when you have an abbey or a monastery or a convent, they will have their own church, and sometimes, depending on the setup and the timing, the local village will have their own little church, and that will also be quite historic. And so these people are going to go and visit that one and then meet at the Bluebell Arms, which will be the local pub afterwards. As the last pink parasol and straw hat disappeared through the little gate, Peggy and Bobby emerged from their retirement, somewhat stiff and cramped, because they've been crouched down amongst the bushes, and were just about to give vent to a wild war whoop as some slight relief to their pent-up feelings, when they noticed that after all they were not alone. Two antiquarians had remained behind, so evidently fascinated with their surroundings that they lingered about, measuring the walls with a yard tape, that's a tape measure, a long one, and putting down the items in well-worn pocketbooks, writing down the information that they had actually determined. One of them was a singular-looking old gentleman, small and thin, with a clean-shaven face and a scholarly stoop. Seemingly, he thought considerably more of his books than of such details as his toilette, for there was a very large expanse of grey sock visible above his dusty shoes, and his limp shirt front looked guiltless of starch. Guiltless of starch, so it hadn't been laundered recently. In spite of the heat of the day, he wore two overcoats, one above the other, and the pockets of both were filled to overflowing with pamphlets and papers. He kept a fragment of pencil continually in the corner of his mouth, like a cigar, and Peggy noticed that when he accidentally mislaid his pocketbook, he jotted down notes on his cuffs. He would write things down on the cuff of his shirt, just like Professor Brainstorm, who I think is one that we can't read yet because it's not old enough. No, they would be fun. I'll have to look into the copyright status of those. Jotted down notes upon his cuffs as if it were quite an ordinary occurrence to use them in lieu of paper. The other old gentleman was stout and jovial looking, with a full grey beard and whiskers, and an amazingly juvenile suit of tweeds. Brightly patterned, that means. It was evident that his pitch of enthusiasm, or perhaps physical endurance, was not equal to that of his companion, for he panted with the heat as he held the other end of the yard measure and gave vent to occasional grunts of disapprobation as he toiled painfully to the tops of the mounds to get bird's-eye views of the outlined cells. That's the little rooms that each of the monks would sleep in. They were called cells. They were set apart from each other. Or take snapshots of the remains of the windows and columns. This is with a little box brownie camera or something similar, maybe one with a concertina front, that sort of thing. Interesting, most interesting, abounding at every yard with testimony of the past, and in some ways unique and a valuable contribution to our list of early English abbeys. Remember, this is probably before the days of the National Trust and English Heritage and the Society for the Protection of Ancient Monuments government department. I think that happened just before the Second World War. I'm not sure. But this is well before that. So therefore there wasn't the protection of historic places back then. Hence this other guy being prepared to pull it all down to develop it. And a valuable contribution to our list of early English abbeys. With your photographs, Sedgwick, we shall have ample material for our projected treatise, which I trust should be ready for the September issue of the Archaeologian. And the little old gentleman sat down on a broken column and pulled a sheaf of papers out of one of his many pockets. Warm work, though, Doctor, replied the other, wiping his steaming brow. I believe I would sell my birthright for a tumbler of water. I wonder if they would give us some up at the house. There does not seem to be a spring or anything about here. You'll be having tea soon, said he of the two overcoats, unsympathetically, and I am most anxious to compare your notes and measurements with my own. This is such a favourable opportunity that I think we had better seize the occasion while we are on the spot to make fresh observations in case of any discrepancies to our descriptions. So sorry. I love your accent, says past shelf date, but sometimes I'm confused. It's not uncommon with the Kiwi accent, sorry. My first visit, I wondered why the protagonist was called Piggy. Yeah, the way the New Zealanders say the E sound, the E vowel sound, Peggy. I can't say the American way of saying it because to a Kiwi, a lot of American vowel usage sounds like you actually have two vowels together and you slide from one into another. And for us, it's just hilarious. And now as I hear monks sleep in sills, yeah, sills. I think, isn't it cats who sleep on windowsills in the sun? Yeah, sills, C-E-L-L-S. And yeah, I'm not even going to bother trying to put on an accent apart from the actual gentleman speaking or the lady who's working in the kitchen with Lillian, the housemaid. The stout man seemed to comply unwillingly. I wondered why. I'm not surprised. Sorry, not I wondered why. I'm not surprised. I'm glad we can entertain you back. That's great. It's lovely. And the friends were soon immersed in calculations, quite unaware of the two pairs of watchful eyes so close by which had taken in the whole situation. I'm sorry for that fat man, whispered Bobby. He looks as if he were ready to melt. The way he pounded up and down those mounds made me hot to watch him. Poor old fellow. You'd think the other would be hot too, in two overcoats. I declare I shall go in and fetch some milk, cried Peggy, starting up impulsively. You can stay if you like and tell them I'm bringing it. But bashful Bobby distinctly objected to accost strangers and preferred to follow her in the direction of the house, offering to act scout while she did the foraging. Not being quite certain how her efforts at hospitality might be received at headquarters, Peggy watched Nancy successfully out of the way, and dashing into the dairy emerged presently with a jug of milk and 2 glasses, perilously balanced on a tray, which she nearly upset in her efforts to elude the returning deity to the kitchen. "You can go first, Bobby," she suggested as she struggled with her burden through the side gate, "and say good afternoon and would they like some milk, and then I can offer them the tray." "Well, I like that when it was your idea altogether. No, thank you, I don't care to be in it." And meanly deserting at the very last moment, Bobby fled into the sanctuary of the garden, leaving Peggy to carry her refreshments to the ruins alone. I think if it had not been for the fact that she knew Bobby was peeping at her from over the wall, Peggy would have turned tail too. But as it was, she felt bound to carry out her project, and under the fire of his laughing eyes, she walked sturdily towards the strangers. She had thought of at least 3 pretty speeches to make for the occasion, but when it came to the point, she could not remember any of them, and could only hold out the tray, blushing very much, and saying nothing at all. The old gentleman looked so surprised at the sudden apparition before them that the numerous books and papers fell to the ground in wild confusion. "Hebe, surely," said the stout gentleman with a little bow, "is this nectar which you are offering us, fair nymph? Doctor, this is indeed a godsend. Allow me to pour you out a glass of this beverage. Ah, nectar indeed," as he set down his empty tumbler. "I feel refreshed and invigorated. May I ask if it is the sprite of the ruins to whom we are indebted for this bounty?" Rather taken aback by his bantering tone, Peggy was at a loss what to answer, but the other old gentleman, noticing her confusion, came to the rescue. "Many thanks, my dear, for your kindness," he said, with stately old-fashioned courtesy. "We have much enjoyed the examination of your most interesting ruins, and if your father had been at home today, I should have given myself the pleasure of thanking him in person. I shall make a point, however, of sending him a copy of my report in the Archaeologian, which I trust he will find many items of information respecting the origin and history of the abbey, with which, perchance, he may be unacquainted. By the by, may I ask if any curiosities have ever been found while ploughing in these fields?" Yes, because that's often how they are found. In fact, if you look on YouTube at a YouTube channel called Time Team, and if you want the older ones, Time Team Classics, you will actually be able to watch an English television program where they go out, and often they will be investigating fields where the plough has kept on turning things up, and finally someone has written into them and said, "We think there's something historic here. We know there was meant to be, going by local documents, but we keep finding things in the field every time we plough it. So please come and have a look and see if you can tell us what was there." And so they will. They'll have a 3-day archaeological dig. Now, I used to think, 3 days, they're not going to find anything useful and it'll all be made up. Well, I don't know how much of it's made up in terms of timing, but in actual fact, they find enough to then be able to safely cover it back up again, make a report to different archaeological societies and governmental departments to either get things protected or to actually have those organisations put in a request to be able to do a full archaeological dig there to find out what was there. Sometimes they are Roman ruins, sometimes there's Iron Age ruins, sometimes they're medieval, all sorts of things. And they're all underneath the soil and they've been turned up by the plough, which is why this not the Time Team, but that idea is why this gentleman is saying, have you had anything turned up by ploughs? Makes a lot of sense. By the by, may I ask if any curiosities have ever been found while ploughing in these fields? Not when they were ploughing, said Peggy, finding her voice at last, but when we were digging last Easter here in the ruins, we found a funny old box. Remember? What? cried the old gentleman, bouncing up in his excitement like an India rubber ball, getting all excited, definitely. You actually found something here in the Abbey? When digging, Sedgwick, do you hear that? The stout man smiled appreciatively. Perhaps our fair nymph will kindly describe the nature of the discovery, he suggested. There was a big old stone box first, began Peggy. A stone coffin, gasped the old gentleman. But there weren't any bones inside, continued Peggy, rather enjoying herself now that she had once broken the ice. It was something much queerer than that, a wooden box full of old books with writing you can't read and strange little pictures all round the edges. Yes, remember the stone coffin part of it appeared to be smaller than a normal coffin. That was why they were going to bury the dog in it. And what have you done with them? Where are they? Can you show them to me? Cried the enthusiastic antiquarian, almost dancing with eagerness. They're in the loft. I can take you if you'd like to look at them. So the loft is in the top of the barn. Come along, Sedgwick. I believe we may be on the verge of a valuable discovery. And stuffing his papers into his capacious pockets, the old gentleman started off with impatient strides, bearing his stout fellow in his wake, his stout friend in his wake, like a little tug towing a steamer. There is an illustration, but we haven't quite got to it. And I shall be I'm looking forward to showing it to you. I'm surprised they don't faint. Yes, these two old chaps, they have to get those books out of the hottest part of the old barn, I know. Possibly this having all the straw or hay stored up there as well will help it to actually be not quite as hot as it could have been, just to stabilise it, to insulate the space a bit. I'm not sure. I would hope so. Anyway, Peggy often laughed afterwards when she remembered how she escorted the pair up the rickety steps into the granary and prevented them from falling through the trapdoor into the stable below, and guided them between the sacks of grain in the dark loft, where, flinging open the wooden shutter, she let in a stream of sunlight and disclosed to view the ancient chest. So exciting! I'm going to show you the picture now, even though, oh, there's the wonderful picture of our jigsaw puzzle too. Sorry. I'll let that one finish doing its thing and give us the words. Other Worlds. And the photographer or the artist is Anatoly 777. I really like that one because I feel like that's what books are like. You're reading a book and it takes you into a whole other world. We've got 6 pages left, so I'm not going to give you another puzzle, I'm sorry, but you can enjoy the picture on that one, just because there's not that much to go. And then I'll be finishing for today. I was going to give you this picture. That's right, I did tell you that. You can look at this picture instead. We haven't quite got to where this happens, but we're nearly there, so you can enjoy this picture. So she was flinging open the wooden shutter. She let in the stream of sunlight and disclosed to view the ancient chest. And yes, you wouldn't normally have the books in the sunlight. In a normal historic context where you are looking after them, but a momentary or a very short exposure is probably not going to be a problem. And also here, if we go by this illustration, the sun is not directly on where the books are, it's just giving light in that part of the loft. A curious piece of workmanship, Sedgwick. Saxon undoubtedly, I should say, the style of the box. I agree with you, Doctor. Shall I lift the lid? By all means. What have we here? And the little man squatted down on a sack of oats and lifted out one of the books with the reverent touch of a true collector. So that's this chap here. He's sitting on a sack of oats and he's got a book in his hands. Unique! Unique! He cried, rubbing his hands with delight. Sedgwick, this is indeed a find. If I do not mistake, this is a genuine portion of the Saxon Chronicle. That's a really, really old one. And will make a sensation in the antiquarian world. There is something here which looks like a copy of the Gospels. replied the other, who had been turning over the contents of the chest with much interest. And there seem to be some exquisite breviaries and hours of the Virgin. Just see this illuminated border. It reminds me of the Book of Kells. That is a very historic, very famous illustrated manuscript. A Book of Hours, which is where you have the calendar of the different saints for the church year. You have the different words used for different parts of the Mass, and you also have different prayers written down. And the prayers and scriptures are used in the reciting of the hours. So the hours being the different times of prayer. There were 7 prayer times during the day for the monks, and often a breviary would be the one that is just the list of the different things that are said during the Mass, and also their prayer times without the additional extra pieces. And then you have a Book of Hours which has all these other bits in it as well. They were often used, a Book of Hours was often used by someone who was someone of high standing within society, so that they could follow along with the prayer times that the monks followed and the nuns followed. So you would have the one that's first thing in the morning, then you have one in the middle of the day, you have one in the late afternoon, you have one after dinner time in the evening, you have one in the early evening before you go to bed, or whatever, I think that's what it is, and then you have one in the middle of the night. And each of those times they would get up and pray, and they felt that because it was disrupting their sleep or their work or their whatever else it was that they were doing, that they were actually sacrificing that thing for God as a gift for God. That was part of the thinking. And also it's based on a particular verse in, I think it's this book of Psalms, in the middle of the Bible, where it talks, David, the psalm writer at the time, talks about praying 7 times a day. 7 times a day I will pray to you. And it's his way of expressing his love of God and what he was going to do as a man who really felt that he needed to be close to God, and that this was partly how he was going to do it. And so the monks took this idea and they created these different books that were useful. So a missal is a book that is the words of the Mass that is recited at different times of day in a monastery or convent, but it's also the Mass, the early version of the Mass that's said on a Sunday at church, in a Catholic church. A Psalter is a book of Psalms. Psalter, Psalter. It's a book of Psalms which are used during the hours. A Psalter would mean that you could open up to whatever the psalm that is relevant for the prayer time of the day and the day of the week and the time of the year, because the different parts of the church year have different significances. And so a Psalter was so that you could look up whichever psalms you were going to be reading, and they would read them out loud together or recite them out loud together. At their meal times in a silent monastery, you would often have someone who would read out loud from a particular psalm as part of that service time, to keep their focus on God. Anyway, so that's some of what those different things. The Hours of the Virgin will be a book of hours that is dedicated to the Virgin Mary, and it will have prayers in it that are associated with Marian worship. That means where you honour Mary as the Mother of Christ, as part of that church season. In the early days, they didn't do that. Later on, but still early church, they did do it. So that's what that was about. Just see this illuminated border. It reminds me of the Book of Kells. The same period, doubtless, Sedgwick. This is an extraordinary day. Such a discovery only comes once in a lifetime. They have to get those books out of the hottest part of the barn is now becoming very apparent, isn't it? Some of the bindings are queer too, put in Peggy, hunting out one of her favourites. Look at this. It seems as if it were made of lead, with little pieces of coloured glass stuck into it. Lead? Coloured glass? Chuckled the old gentleman. My dear child, let me tell you, this is antique silver, set with with jewels. Wait till you see it cleaned. Jewels in the back of an old book, gasped Peggy, astonished in her turn. How did they get there? Is it really true? Certainly, many of the books in old times had covers of enormous value. The ancient abbey, no doubt, was a rich one, and much of their wealth would be devoted to their library. Then if these are really precious stones, said Peggy, I suppose they'll be worth something. Father said he was afraid the old books were of no value except to people who were fond of such things. We were waiting till our rector came home to look at them. They are of the utmost value, my dear, not only for the jewelled covers, but for the rare contents and illuminations. That's the illustrations, the borders around the pages, and also the big capital, ornate capital letters used at the beginning of a new chapter or a new section within the Bible, or anything like that. But for the rare contents and illuminations which are of a type most scarce and precious. I have not had time to go through the whole contents of the chest, but I should say if these books were put up at Christie's, that's the most famous auction house for antiques, they would realise many thousands of pounds. With your father's permission, I should like to send down an expert from the Bodleian to examine them. Now the Bodleian is a library at Oxford University, and it's a very, very old library, and they know a lot about very, very old books. Yes. There will be keen bidding with the British Museum if they're put up for sale, remarked the stout gentleman. It would be a most exciting occasion. I should make a point of being present in person and use all my influence to secure them for Oxford. There would probably be representatives bidding from all the principal libraries and museums in the kingdom, not to mention the United States and the continent, said the old gentleman. Oh, this is marvellous. They might have a chance of actually rescuing the farm. That would be cool. But please, do the books really belong to Father? Asked Peggy, who did not quite understand this conversation. Yes, this is the thing that I'm concerned about. Certainly, if your father is the legal owner of the property, no one else can lay the slightest claim to them, and I congratulate him on the value of his prize. Remind me about treasure trove after this, okay? Then would it be possible for Father to get the money for them soon? Faltered Peggy, blushing scarlet at putting such a question. Yes, there's such a time pressure here. Without doubt it would. If he should wish to realise them at once, the sale could be pushed on in a few weeks. Only time should be allowed for the Americans to hear of them, as they always run prices up. In other words, they make the price go up, so it would be in your benefit if it could be left until the Americans can be part of the sale. If agreeable to your father, I will call tomorrow morning and discuss the subject with him, and in the meantime I can only beg that all possible care will be taken of these priceless treasures. The chest seems secure from any ravages of rats or mice. Still, I should advise its being carried into the house without further delay. You agree with me, Sedgwick? Certainly, it is wiser to run no risks. By the by, looking at his watch, may I remind you, Doctor, that our wagonettes are due to start at 5 o'clock, and it's already past. They've missed their ride. I fear the members of our party will be awaiting us with some impatience at the Bluebell Arms. Dear me, said the old gentleman, I fear I am sadly forgetful. In the society of such enthralling interests, I have no conception of the flight of time. Tomorrow morning, my dear, if your father will be at liberty, I shall give myself the pleasure of calling upon him. And regretfully, closing the lid, he tore himself away from the old chest, like a reluctant lover from his mistress, and took his departure, leaving Peggy, nearly wild with excitement, to rush tumultuously into the house with her wonderful piece of news. Isn't that such exciting news? That's the end of the chapter. We have one more left to go in this story. We are not reading it today because I have promised I wasn't going to read it today. I said I'm going to read it next time. It's not a very long one, but we will save it for when everyone who wants to be here for the last chapter can be here. So the next chapter is called Conclusion, and it's going to be a hopeful conclusion. We know this just because. That's one of the things I really like about children's books, especially the slightly older ones. They tend to have a happy ending in some way or another. You're most welcome, iBlueWave. It's great to have you here. Peggy's going to need a lot of help carrying that chest into the house, says past shelf date. I think so. I'm guessing that she will wait till Father comes home and Father and Joe, or who's the other chap? There's another man who helps around the farm, will actually carry it down. I think it's Joe is the younger one of the two. And they will carry it down from the loft and put it inside the house. And then the old gentleman and his friend will come tomorrow. Hopefully, I'm hoping that they will be able to sell 1 or 2 items very quickly to be able to deal with the family debt, the farm debt, and then the rest can go up to auction and take a lot longer so that they can get some really good prices on it. Because the family don't need to keep it. Maybe they'll be allowed to keep something as a special reminder, but there's no value to the family of keeping the books. They were the monastery books. They were hidden away, obviously, but I'm thinking we'll find out a little bit more about that next time. So there you go. We have 1 more chapter to go. I'll see you here in 2 days' time, unless something happens. I'm hoping not, but we should be able to finish off this book and to have a discussion about what we thought of it and see if we can come up with an idea for what our next book to read will be. So I look forward to seeing you then. Let's see if we've got somebody that we can go and raid. Let's have a look over here. Hang on. Oh, this is a good question. Let's have a look. It's great to be able to read for you guys. I really do enjoy it. Thank you. Thank you for posting your local time. This is how I know you're 15 hours ahead of me. You're most welcome. Part of the reason I post my local time is because a lot of the people who like seeing my Instagram posts are actually people in New Zealand. And I'm hoping that they're going to come and join in a bit more. And so if I give them my local time, then they'll be able to see it. But also, don't forget to have a look on my schedule section of Twitch to see what time it is for your time zone, because Twitch will always show you your time zone unless you're using a VPN that's set to a whole other region of the world, in which case it won't. So let's go and see if we can go and raid. Let's have a look. House? Hoot House, shall I see? Or Digital Dancers? What are your preferences? I don't know if they're online. I'm just trying to check. No, they're not currently online. So let's see if Hoot House are live. Yes, Hoot House are live. We shall go and raid them. And then I will go and do my my dinner prep. So there you go. Great to have you here. Looking forward to seeing you all next time when we have the conclusion of our book, and I shall give you some ideas of what I'm thinking of reading next. So let's go off and raid Hoot House livestream. There'll be somebody around to say hi when we arrive. So say hi back, see how they're getting on, find out if they've actually seen any owls just in the last, since you were last there with them. And we'll go and see what the owls are up to. Hopefully, we might get to see one. There we go. Raid now. Bye.